Hello and welcome back once again to the Inquisitor podcast with me, Marcus Cauchi. Today my guests are Dave Pender and Dan Simmons. The two of them have been in sales for between 15 and 27 years, and they've recently launched an AI tool to help salespeople hopefully get out of their own way. And we're going to be exploring whether AI is helping salespeople become clearer or just more certain in their ignorance. And we're going to dig into the pros and cons of using AI, how to use it well, and when not to use it, and how not to use it. So, Dave, would you mind just giving us 30 to 60 seconds on your history first?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've been in sales and sales leadership for the last 27 years. So I've led teams that have been business development teams, account management teams, key account teams, usually in a SaaS environment. And I've done that globally. And I've actually worked with Dan for the last kind of 15 years of those.
Excellent. So, Dan, it sounds like you're a protege. Let's have your history.
So yeah, very similar to Dave in terms of the background of leading sales teams in that SaaS world. In terms of the personal side, I'm based in London, got two daughters. They keep me very grounded and humble. I love playing golf, watching sport, and I'm endlessly curious. So that's where I think it comes on nicely to today. I've got an obsession with AI, not because I love technology, but just I'm fascinated on how AI can genuinely improve the lives of people, including myself.
Both of you have come from SaaS backgrounds, which, if I'm being brutally blunt, doesn't necessarily represent the broader range and experience of sales. And so we need to make sure that people understand that we're coming at it from a SaaS perspective, but I might bring in other industry sectors and be curious to see the contrast. I think many of the problems are the same, but SaaS has lived in a rarefied atmosphere where there was a lot of money thrown at it. And there is a tendency, I think, for SaaS to think all sales are like theirs. But if you're flogging heavy industrial manufactured goods or fast-moving consumer goods, it's quite a different environment. And they don't necessarily have the same kind of measures. They don't have the same technology stacks and so on. So that may come into the conversation. It may not. It depends. But I just wanted to set that as a possibility. So let's start with sales generally. What would you say has changed over the last 8 to 10 years in particular that has meant that the old way of doing things is no longer appropriate? Dave, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think there are a lot of old ways of doing things that are still endlessly appropriate in sales. Whatever your sales structure is, the information gathering, the prep that you need to do, the questioning that you need to do, the relationship building that you need to do, all of those things, they remain the same. And in my view, sales has always been and will continue to be, and this is maybe a little bit crude, but it still needs to be a numbers game, right? The more people that you talk to, the more opportunity that you have potentially to win. So I think those things remain the same. I think what is different is certainly, of course, the advent of AI in the last few years has kind of created this different world where more is expected of people. People are expected to deliver things quickly, right? A couple of years ago, AI was this kind of newfangled thing in the sales world. And some of us, Dan and I as examples, we weren't on the bleeding edge of early adoption, but we were early to the game. And therefore, the things that we were able to do with AI looked really impressive. Whereas now, these days, I feel like AI is very much expected. AI is very much used as table stakes in terms of the efficiency that you are expected to bring to the workplace. And I think that means that pressures on sales reps and pressures on sales leaders has very much increased. They're expected to do more in the same amount of time.
Okay. I'm going to disagree with quite a lot of what you said in a minute, but I'm going to let Dan have his say first.
Yeah, I'll keep it a little bit more direct. I think there's like one thing that I think Dave was touching on that hasn't changed and will never change is the relationship aspect of sales. Like that AI is not going to handle that. It might be able to help you and guide you with it, but it ain't going to handle it. I think what the biggest thing that's changed in the last 8 to 10 years, certainly in my experience as I was selling and leading sales teams, is that buyers are just so much more informed these days, right? We were selling data and market intelligence. Nowadays, you can just go onto AI to answer those same types of questions that we were selling for thousands. So I think that's probably the biggest differentiator.
Excellent. Okay, buckle up, Dave. I'm going to challenge you on sales as a numbers game. I fundamentally disagree with that, but I'd love to have a debate. I think it's one of those phrases that too many people repeat without examining it. And I think it's more accurate to say that sales is an evidence game. If you're talking to twice as many people because my qualification is poor, or I've got a volume of leads that marketing has thrown my way, and my culture is that I have to follow up on all of them, then I'm going to spend an enormous amount of my time having conversations that are badly timed, irrelevant, and then I'm going to be doing a lot of chasing and rework. I'd like to qualify what you mean. I get that there has to be a certain volume, but I think the quality of conversations matters. There has to be a certain baseline. But in my case, if I had a rep working for me and they only had 5 good conversations a day, and those are the only dials they made, I'd be really happy with that, rather than them trying to make 200 dials a day in order to have 20 touch points. So let's just flesh that out.
Yeah, I think qualification is important. And by the way, I thought your eyeballs were actually going to pop through your glasses when I said numbers game. I can tell you would disagree. And you know what? And I don't disagree with sales as an evidence game. I think you're absolutely right. It's about the qualified prospects that you're going to be talking to. And it is, a lot of it is about the research that you do in advance, whether it's you, whether you get your AI friend to help you with it. But it's about making sure that the people that you're going to talk to are qualified people who are most likely to be relevant for your service. And I genuinely believe that if you have done that, if 2 people have done that, and one person calls 10 of them and another person calls 20 of them, if their skill sets are approximately the same, the chances of the person who's called 20 of being able to sell is 2x the person of the chances of the person who's only called 10. But it is all about that initial groundwork. If you don't have the groundwork and you're just picking up the phone or blindly going to see people, I totally agree. It's a complete waste of time.
I think it's a matter of nuance, and we can dig into that in a minute. But you've touched on something that's very close to my heart, which is when an organization drives leads through marketing, and then marketing filters them through SDRs pass them on to salespeople. One of the big challenges is making sure that they're all fully aligned and joined up, and they're compensated and rewarded and measured over the same things. In most SaaS organizations, those functions are siloed. So Dan, let me bring you in on this. When marketing is generating leads, they might generate, let's say, 3,000 for the team. They're generating what are loosely termed MQLs, marketing qualified leads. Then the sales team, let's say 10 of them, have to follow up on all 3,000. That means they've got to contact 300 people. Marketing is measured on the volume of leads. The SDR is measured on the number of meetings or demos. And the AE is measured on closed revenue and new logos. That misalignment, that disconnect, in my experience, tends to mean that as the customer gets funneled through your process, they get handed off from one point to the other. They have to repeat themselves. The SDR is trying to pitch the meeting, so they try and book the meeting or book the demo. If they hit their demo target, they get paid, whether or not you should be speaking to that customer. And I'm really curious about your experience, obviously 15 years in SaaS, how that falls over for the customer and what impact that has on the sellers.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly experienced that type of behavior in what I have in my experience of working in that environment. Like some processes and alignments and things have been a lot better with some groups than others over the years. I think it goes back to what Dave was saying, right? We've had situations where the process is super clean, where we know who our ideal target customer is, and we only go after them. And, as an example, marketing put the lead through into Salesforce. We have different grading systems based on the type of person that we want to see. So if it's a certain persona, it would be A, B, or C as an example. We only go after them. We only reward the SDRs for them. Everything else is noise. We've had those types of situations, those structures, and it's unbelievable, right? It's a great customer experience because we're talking the same language each single time. We know what the customer's looking for. We know their challenges. It's a lot more repetitive. On the flip side, yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare when all the different teams are not aligned, right? Whether it's SDRs, marketing, or the sales teams, it comes down to just communication. It's getting on the same page. It's meeting regularly with these people. We created mini sales, kind of mini leadership teams in our sales org. So we empowered the salesperson in our business to be the CEO of their book of business, and that they would work with their supporting team, their leadership team, their SDR, their customer success manager, their marketing manager, and ensure that they got them all aligned. And I think it didn't work with everyone, but that type of framing, does work.
Well, that's music to my ears. I mean, I fundamentally believe that product, marketing, SDRs, AEs, customer success, operations, are all part of one team, which is the go-to-market team. And they exist because of, not in spite of, the customer. And their job is to empower the customer and equip the customer to make the best possible decision for themselves. But when it comes back down to how people are measured and how they're compensated, the driver tends to be the transaction. And my view is that we should be defending the decision, not the transaction. So to pick up on something you said earlier, Dave, about driving efficiency, I think one of the big mistakes that most organizations, go-to-market organizations make, is that they focus on efficiency before effectiveness. They focus on contact before relevance and timing. And as a result of that, they end up scaling what doesn't work. So we will come on to AI in a second, because this is essentially teeing us up for that.
Yep. And I think part of that is also about strong leadership, particularly in kind of middle management, where you are perhaps the decisions are coming down from above as to what you need to produce, and it's all about efficiency. And then you're also trying to lead your team, and what you're saying to them is it's all about effectiveness, because most people do understand that, yeah, who cares if you've picked up the phone or you've gone to see 100 customers in a month? If you don't have any deals, you know, for a few months in a row, depending on the type of org you're in, you're not going to be in the business. So, you know, efficiency means nothing without the effectiveness. So if you're a strong leader, it's about really feeding back up, managing upwards, and say, hey, this is what I will deliver. Let's get clear on specifically what the revenue goal is. Let's talk numbers. What do we need to achieve this year? And you need to leave the rest with me. It doesn't matter whether my team speak to 50 people or whether my team speak to 1,000 people. If I deliver this number to you, are you happy? And therefore, the message you can deliver to your team isn't wildly different to the message that's being given to you.
So I can think of a dozen people off the top of my head that I've had interactions with, not too long ago, where they were playing the numbers game. They were obsessing about managing activity instead of meaningful action. What would you say to managers like that? Because clearly the performance was shocking, but they were attached to managing what they knew instead of what was effective based on the evidence and the results.
Exactly. So I guess I'll give you two things. One that was stuck in my head from a long time ago, and one that is a bit more recent for me. One, I would say to them now, what my boss said to me, because I was definitely, as a more junior leader, a long time ago, but before the grey came into the beard, as a junior leader, I was obsessed with the numbers game. Like that's it. Didn't matter. It was just about, you got to have this many calls. You got to do this. And my boss had said to me, it's all about the conversion rate. Like look at what's happening here. Like you need to know and understand your numbers at the moment. How many calls does it take you to actually get a business conversation? And when you have a business conversation, how many of them do you need in order to get to the end of the funnel where they're going to make a decision? How many of those actually convert, and how much does that make you? What's your average order value? And then when you examine the entire chain, you can see what your weak link is there. Like at the moment, you're making 150 calls to get one sale. That doesn't work. So what do we need to improve within this? Actually, you could be sitting there and making 15 quality calls and still getting the same amount of revenue. So that's the number one thing I would say. More recently, and this is definitely in alignment with a lot of the work that we do now, and AI is definitely very, very helpful for this. It's actually looking at the blind spots. It's not necessarily about, okay, how do I get from good to great? Or how do I get from okay to good, right? We should all be striving to do that on a daily basis. But where I found that most people break down, it's in those things that they don't even know are important to them, that actually, if they were able to spot something that they weren't aware of and work on that, that is where they get to win.
Lovely. Okay. So, Dan, when it comes to using AI, let's start with how people are misusing it, first of all, and then we'll start to dig into how to use it well. So how do you see salespeople and go-to-market teams using AI in ways that do harm?
Oh, I mean, there's so many ways, right? There's the basic ones, which we're hearing more and more about, right? And people are becoming a lot more savvy to it as they're using AI more and more. It's just how obvious some of the content look, right? An email, the type of grammar that's used, the punctuations that are used, those M dashes, all of that stuff, right? It stinks of AI quite often. So that's something that I think people need to be more and more aware of, especially when you're, communicating with customers. It's very easy just to copy and paste from your ChatGPT and leave the start of it like, oh, here's an example you could use, or the bottom of it. Have you tried something different, right? Like big error. We've all done it. You're guilty of it, probably. I certainly am. I'm pretty sure we did it to you when we were chatting about this podcast originally. So it's about, the one thing you got to do, you've got to be diligent. Like, you've got to be looking into, I don't want to go too much about what to do, but the output that is coming back with is so critical. Like, massive mistake that so many people are making. And then I think the biggest mistake that the way that people are using it is to get them to do things. It's getting them to think. It's getting them to ask the email, write the email, or prepare for the pitch, or whatever that may be, without giving it the full context. So, I've spoke to you about this before. Dave knows that I love using this. I will simply pull up the dictaphone piece. I will open that and I will just start spitballing, talk to it about, it depends what the situation is. If we take this podcast as an example, I would give it all of the context about this podcast. It knows all about me and my business and what Dave and I are doing, but it doesn't know about you. It didn't know about the conversation that we had preparing for this. So all of that gets fed in with more context as I'm able to talk to it and think using my brain rather than just kind of type in. Allows me to be a lot more free flowing. And that's how I get a really strong output. So rather than just, hey, write me this, it's write me this with all of this type of context.
So to build on what you've said, context is absolutely critical. But I think one of the key areas that AI can really be powerful is not in just regurgitating and amplifying what doesn't work, but in helping drive human judgment. And I think, to build on your point, it's vital that there is always human oversight, because it hallucinates, it makes terrible mistakes, it has a memory that it might draw in from something that you uploaded from somewhere else, and it confuses it. And again, depending on the social media feeds that you're using, it may also bring in stuff that you really don't want to have in there. Dave, let's talk about using AI as a thought partner, first of all. How do you advise your clients to use it in order to help them think better and make better judgments?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what we do. And the other part of it is just not being lazy and getting it to think for you. Because that was one of the questions you asked Dan as well. So many people just give it to AI, it will do it, and I forget about it. But ultimately, we're the ones that are going to deliver the work. The results are based on us, and it needs to be based on our human judgment. So the first thing that we would always say is give it as much context as you possibly can. So, honestly, at this point, ChatGPT knows more about me than my partner does. It just knows everything about me, and I'm quite happy in terms of privacy laws to kind of just give it everything that I possibly can. So if I've got a scenario that I'm working on, I will try and I'll speak to it exactly as Dan said. So much easier to just actually turn on the microphone rather than type away and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve today. Let me just tell you everything I'm thinking about this. And then what I would like you to do is to pick the holes in it. Don't sugarcoat it for me. Don't tell me, oh, this is wonderful, Dave. This is the best idea you've ever had, which AI is very kind of prone to do. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what I haven't thought of. Give me a better idea. Push back. Be my critical friend. And that's what we tell our customers to do, is to do that. And you can do that, one, through asking it there. And then I would also just recommend this as well, kind of a top tip here. I have a critical friend setting in my ChatGPT. So not everybody knows this, but whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or whatever, usually if you go to your name, there is a personalization setting, and that will say, hey, do you want ChatGPT to talk to you as a professional, in a soft voice, in a critical voice, etc. And then there's a free text where I've put in, never ever pander to me, always push back, talk to me in this way, be my best critical friend. Only tell me I'm excellent when you can give me 3 reasons as to why what I've given you is excellent. And in general, look for the faults in what I'm saying and spot the areas that I've missed and need to consider. So I would recommend that for everybody, because I think these days people are getting more and more frustrated with AI being your best friend, and that's not very helpful.
Couldn't agree more. Always run to the sound of gunfire. Go looking for evidence that you are wrong, and go and find people whose opinion is different to yours, in order that you can gain perspective instead of being stuck in your own perception. So yeah, the critical friend is really key. I would add to that, have it run red teaming exercises, have it run accusation audits. So an accusation audit is essentially just rip it to pieces, find every reason why it will not work. And I also like to use red line, green line. which is a lean process. So it looks at all the things that can go wrong and all the things that can go right, and then find the delta between them. And by doing that, you have a vague possibility that it might actually start telling you some of the truth. Dan, I'd like to build on the idea of improving one's judgment, because I fundamentally believe our job in sales is not to convince, it's not even to make the sale. The sale is a byproduct of creating the conditions for the buyer to make the best possible decision for themselves. So for a seller to be able to create those conditions, what are the precursors that need to be in place in terms of research, territory, and account planning, understanding the context in which the customer is operating, their competitive landscape? Can you go into some detail there? Because in my experience, that's almost never happening.
I think a lot of those are some that they're still the core. A lot of those are the core fundamentals that Dave was talking about that just won't replace a salesperson, right? They are things that I think AI can help you do some of that research on who the company is and some recent news, but we also know that that's not always relevant and up to date. And we spoke about this in our initial chat. It's great if you've got a good enough understanding of the topic, right? So whatever that topic may be, you might be wanting to research again, whatever, football squads. And if you know enough about football, you're going to know that it's kind of current and up to date. But if you have no idea about football, it might start feeding you data from 2, 3, 4 years ago that's just not relevant. So you can't rely on the tool if you just don't know enough about the topic. So that's why doing your own pre-call research is so imperative, right? Really understanding what is going on with that customer, their recent news, their pain points, how you can possibly help them, and building up all of that picture before you go out and talk to the customer. We can't rely on AI to say, hey, I've got this call with this customer tomorrow. Tell me about it and give me a pitch. We could, after the first call, say, hey, I've got this call with the customer that I spoke with last week. Here is the call. This is everything we discussed. What do you think were the 3 main takeaways? What are the 2 or 3 things I should focus on? Again, whatever your questions you're looking to answer there, great. You've given it a lot of context. I think that's the biggest difference.
And what did I miss? Very important.
What did I miss? What do you mean
No,
by that? Sorry.
that's the question, right? That's the question we need to be asking it, which we do, right? You ask it all the time. Yeah, what did I miss? How could I be better? Where am I wrong? And I think
100%.
I think it's a pre and post as well. I almost see like AI sitting in the middle. It's exactly as Dan said. It's the pre bit, feed it the context, give it as much as possible. Then it will give you the output. But the thing that a lot of people then just stop short on is the validation thereafter, just accepting the output as it is, and then just blindly moving forward with the answer it's given you. You covered that, Marcus. But I think that's really important. It's right at the beginning and right at the end. So yeah, AI will do the middle bit for you, but don't you dare let it do the first bit or the last bit. You can do that at your peril.
Absolutely. So I'm curious in terms of how the AI you've been building creates a separation between buyer evidence and seller narrative and interpretation. So Dave, can you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a sweet spot of where we're living at the moment. So we've just created an app called Blind Spots, and that's really exactly what it does, right? So it's for sales leaders and for sales professionals to really uncover the things about their sales world that they weren't even aware of. So the idea is that you talk into it, you give it as much context as possible, and rather than just giving you extra information about that which you've already given it, it is specifically designed to go away and look for the gaps. What haven't you thought of before? Marcus, your question. What have you missed? What's an area where you're doubling down on that actually is a complete and utter waste of time? So you'll get people, as an example, who will think that they've got genuinely that they've got an issue with closing, that they actually, the way that they asked for the business, the way that they're pricing the deal, that's where it all kind of falls apart. But actually, after 2, 3, 4 calls, if you upload a transcript or talk to it genuinely about what's going on, it will reveal, hold on, you're concentrating on improving your closing script or working here on pricing. It's nothing to do with that. You're single threading. You're only ever speaking to one person at the company, and often it isn't a decision maker. So it's allowing you to find those areas that you're like, oh my God, of course it's that. But when you're knee deep in it, you don't find it yourself.
What does the system actually treat as evidence specifically?
So it will treat, yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I could get that. So the way that you sign up and start with the app is to provide it with a profile. And in that profile, this is where you're giving it a lot of detail. So who you are, your role, your expectations, your goals. And, there's loads of other questions that help you to kind of helps the system to paint a picture of who you are and what you're all about. Then at that point, after that, the idea is at the end of each day or at the start of each day, if we're at the end of each day, you would simply open up the app, pull up the microphone and talk through everything about your day for 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long you want to take. What worked, what didn't, what happened, what didn't happen, challenges, like all of that stuff, calls that went well, that didn't. And the idea is within a 3-4 day period, if not quicker, it starts to build up a really nice picture of what you're doing and what you're not doing. And it compares it versus, yes, the stuff you've set at the start in terms of your profile and everything you filled out there, but also we are asking it to add in calls, add in emails, add in other aspects of your day-to-day that will help to paint that better picture.
Okay, but that's all seller side. I'm really interested in the evidence that you're focusing on in the conversations with customers. What are the exact words that they're picking up on? And what action did the buyer take? What did stakeholders report? That sort of thing.
So that's all where the transcripts come in. So you get to download or upload your transcripts into the system. It's where it becomes really useful, right? Because a really useful way to use AI is exactly as Dan said, it's the cognitive offload, just dumping everything that's in your brain and giving it as much context as possible. The challenge that you have with that on the same by the same token is that it is very biased, right? Even if you think everything you're giving it is the truth and full evidence, it is a story painted in your mind. Once you've got transcripts of calls, once you've got exactly what the buyers have said, either in email or through walking through an hour conversation with you, and you upload that, it's able to kind of compare the two and say, you know what, your view of the world is X. The reality of what is going on is Y. And that's the kind of the genius of it.
And again, for the specifics, because I'm interested to understand how you're training the AI to pick up on specific contextual clues that are coming from the buyer. That's real evidence, as opposed to seller narrative or assumption.
Yeah, I mean, that gets very kind of technical as to how we have trained it, but there's various models that sit inside it. So various kind of sales models, various keywords that are looked for, and as they are brought up, it then compares that to what you've given it, and then it spots what's missing and what isn't.
Okay.
It is also mainly designed in the eyes of making the salesperson a better person, a better seller, a better team player, right? Like that's the focus, as opposed to, how does it necessarily help the buyer? Yes, the seller improves, it's going to improve the buyer experience, but the lens is on how does it make a seller improve?
Okay, I'm going to challenge both of you then. We exist because of the customer, not in spite of them. They don't care about our medic process or our Sandler process or our challenger process or how we have to report BANT. What they care about is the outcomes that they're hiring from us. They care about the risks that they perceive. Whether they're real or not doesn't matter. As long as their brain thinks they are as far as they're concerned. And you've talked about context, but what I'm really interested in is how do you make sure that the system is really understanding the customer through their eyes as opposed to what the seller can do to them? Because I think a lot of the AI systems that I've come across, so for example, my note taker, I can filter it through Sander, I can filter it through Spice, I can filter it through Band, I can filter it through Medic, but all of those are supply side. I'm really interested in the demand side approach to using AI, so that you think as your customer, you meet them where they are and you focus on what they care about. Because in my experience, all of those selling systems, very good. I spent 16 years with Sandler. It was a really good system. Don't get me wrong. But the customer was secondary to making quota. And it was secondary to doing pain discovery and understanding the human underneath it, who we were selling to. We touched on it, but we didn't really start there. So I'm thinking, how do we put the customer right at the heart of everything that we do and build out from there?
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with you slightly. I think it's kind of reciprocal. The first bit, by the way, just comes from leadership. Again, I would say it's all down to leadership, right? It's down to the people that you hire and the culture that you instill in your sales and your working environment. There are plenty of sales environments that are just, kind of Wolf of Wall Street for an analogy, which is just
Yeah.
like, this is the way we do it. Get the numbers. Who cares about the customer? Doesn't matter. You just need to make your numbers, or you're out of here. And if that's the type of culture, it almost doesn't matter what AI is kind of brought in. And on the other side of things, if you have a culture, and Dan and I have experienced both of those things, and probably at the latter end of our career, fortunately, it was more of the focus on the customer. But if that is the culture, if that is your starting point, then again, you're going to hire in that way. The people that you are within your environment are more likely to lead in that way. And thereafter, I think the AI and the sales rep and the customer, it all kind of feeds into one big loop, right? Because if the salesperson doesn't really know what they're doing, if they don't really understand how to kind of interrogate, how to question the fact that pain is important, understanding what the pain is, understanding what the pain of the current environment is, understanding the pain of what it means if they don't do anything. If they don't understand that, then they're no use to the customer anyway. So the system helps them to understand, okay, well, where can I get better at these things? And it's not just, oh, where can I get better so I can make more commission and go on my nice holiday? It's okay, so where can I get better that will allow me to understand my customer better, that will help me to support them more to get to the outcome that they need to get to, and in turn, actually, I'll get paid very handsomely for that, and around and around and around it goes. So I do think it's reciprocal rather than just kind of this one-dimensional state.
So can the AI refuse to answer the question on the basis that it doesn't have enough evidence?
Yes. There's an error message that will come up that will just say, you haven't fed me enough. I need more context. You need to tell me these things. Or it will sometimes give you a percentage and say, what you've given me is quite flimsy. Based on what you're saying, it appears that. And if you can get me X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and Z, depending on where you're listening, I'll be able to kind of give you. I'll be able to give you more. But honestly, when you see the outcomes, I'll be happy to send this to you afterwards. When you see the outcomes of the blind spots, like they are really stunning.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm nauseatingly aware of them, having a fair number myself.
Yeah.
I had to build myself an agent called "Get Out of Your Own Way" Marcus, so that I'd shut up and I'd ask the right questions, and I use it live.
Yeah.
Can you send me the login details for that, please?
Well, it's been designed specifically for my particular.
No worries. I'd just say as well, like we've trained the model to be pretty direct and hard hitting and not beat around the bush versus what we know the likes of ChatGPT and Claude can be. It doesn't mince its words. It's very direct, and it's that friend that we all need, but probably we don't all have.
Or necessarily enjoy.
Yes.
So we touched on ICP earlier. One thing I always teach is that you've got your sweet spot ICP, but then you have your non-ICP, and a lot of MQLs fit into that category, and that's just dead work, where you're basically an unwelcome interruption because you're neither relevant or valuable, and you certainly aren't going to be timely. But the most dangerous is the anti-ICP. The anti-ICP is the Johnny Englishes. They're Mr. Bean in a tux. They're the ones who look like they could be a good prospect, but either you shouldn't sell to them, you could but won't sell to them because of something that's going on in their world, or, and this is more often the case, if you do sell to them, you'll regret it, and then you will create attacks for everybody downstream in the value chain. CS will have problems onboarding them, operations and support will have open tickets, product will end up getting edge cases for new development, and that all hurts your balance sheet and your valuation. So what I'm interested in is, how does the AI help the seller make better judgments on the basis that they are selling to the right people for the right reasons at the right time, and that they are making sure that the customer is capable of executing, because you've got the economics, and that's very important, but you also have to factor in the implementation and the politics. Are they, their team on side, and can they implement and execute? Because I remember working with one, it was $1 billion finance company, and 50% of the customers they closed never activated. And that, depressingly, is not an unusual statistic in my experience.
Yeah, or in ours actually, as products and services got more complex, we experienced that as well. And I think so much of that is around discovery, right? Those salespeople who do excellent discovery and will really put in the time to understand both the customer and the problems they have and what they're looking to solve. That's where it all lives. I will say, in terms of our system, so our blind spots app, it is not designed to do that, right? It's not designed to be all things to all people. It's really designed to figure out, hey, where are you now, and where could you be better versus your goals and what your business requires of you. But to go into that kind of deep dive of, can it help you understand what your anti-ICP looks like and ensure that you don't buy to them, that's not something that we've trained the model on. It might be something for the future, so thank you very much, Marcus, but right now that's not something that we do. It's super complex and really important, but that's not our nature.
Okay, and you're welcome, by the way. So in terms of using AI for research, let's start with that. How do you deploy it yourselves when you're prospecting? So Dan.
I wouldn't use it like to prospect, like to find the individuals. I might look at it to say who are the type of companies I want to go after. Well, let's give it a different perspective. We had this podcast, right? And Dave and I were like, hang on a second, what are maybe some other podcasts that we could potentially go on in the future? So I've used AI to help me identify 15 or 20 different people that offer do a very similar thing to you, that are producing content via podcasts in the sales world. And then we can reach out to them, post us launching this one and sending them some sound bites. So that's one way I would use it, just to get an initial sense of the potential market. But at that point, I'm then going into each one. I'm looking at them. Does it make sense? Are they relevant? For prospecting, I think it's a dangerous game. I think you can use it to help clean up lists and refine them. And I use it all the time to take long Excel lists and ask it to pick out certain things, but to actually prospect itself, no, I wouldn't.
No, definitely not. Not a fan of that. My inbox is full of people using that badly. Where I'm really focused on is, how do you use it to understand the context in which your customer is operating, the competitive landscape, the products, who their customers are, using it to analyze their annual report and accounts, trends over the last 3 to 5 years, their board, their investors, all of that
Mission
sort of
statements.
Mission
statements, press releases, what's important to them, sound like, what are their key goals that they're going after? Yeah, exactly. Product launches, stuff that they've got in the pipeline. So I think it's useful as a validation tool when you've gone out and you've found, okay, we think this customer could be potential for us. That's when we go through all of that, and we would use it to validate and maybe to give us a couple more things that we hadn't had before. Or, as you said, an annual report is a perfect example. Forgive me, like, I'm not going to read a 200-page annual report of a potential customer that might turn into zero. But actually, if I can upload that and have the summary distilled, and then I can go in and validate that summary, that's really useful to me. So yeah, that in that way, we certainly do it.
One of the other things I've really found very useful is to have the AI take on the function of the different cast of characters. So I have a CFO panel, and they range across the board from SME to enterprise. I have a private equity panel. And again, what I want it to be able to do for me is look at my hypothesis and tear it to shreds and identify what is likely to be said, how it is likely to be received, so that when I speak to my prospects, then I've got a hypothesis that I've tested and I've iterated and I've tried to break, so that by the time I speak to somebody, it's a well-practiced experience. Because I think this is where AI can really come into its own as well, in terms of helping you prepare. You rise to the quality of your preparation. You don't, and you fall to the level of your talent. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because they don't use it as a practice partner. They don't use it to really stress test their hypothesis. If you're using Challenger, for example, your job is to come up with a challenging hypothesis. If it's designed generically instead of tailored for a Series C private equity operating partner, it's not going to land. And this is where I think the conversation for a lot of people could be really valuable. So I'm curious to see your thoughts.
Yeah, you ask it to break it. Oh,
I was going to say two things quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Like Dave mentioned it earlier, it's human AI human, right? So you start with human, you give it the context, you talk to another person, whatever that first human element piece is, your pen with a notepad, right? It's then AI, go into AI, feed it the context. It's then take it out and be a human again, discuss it, analyze it, critique it, research it. Like, that's the killer process, in my opinion. If you follow that as your rule of thumb when you're leveraging AI, you're going to be better off than those that don't follow that process.
By the way, I like what you said about you rise to the level of your what did you say? You rise to the level of
the level of your preparation.
That's it. That's it. I always say you rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, right? So yeah, I think it is about testing and it's about validation. And I try and go for kind of negative testing. So in your example, you might a positive person might be, okay, well, what are the 5 likeliest questions that they're going to give me? How do I prep to wow this next client? You know, these are the things that I know about them. How do I double down in areas which I know are of importance to them? Well, I kind of go the other way and then say, okay, pretend you're the customer that's listening to me, but everything you know about our business, rip my business apart, rip it apart, and then tell me how to put it back together. And that can be really useful.
Okay, because that to me again feels like it's very supply side rather than demand side. So earlier on, I asked you, will it reject information and refuse to answer? And you said yes, it'll issue a warning. But there's a difference between context and evidence. And I'd like to narrow that part of the conversation down a little bit further as well, because context can often be narrative. It can be opinion. Whereas evidence is actually based on actual data, on facts. And I'm curious to see, again, what you would advise people when they're using tools, AI tools, and when they're coaching their own people to differentiate between the two.
I could say chip in here. I mean, I think one of the things that I've trained my model to do is to tell it that when it's giving me a fact, it needs to state where it's got that from. And if it can't do that, don't give me the fact because it's not. I mean, on the flip side, are all facts these days, right? Like everyone is so convincing with the way they say things, whether you're watching a Netflix documentary or the news or whatever it may be, right? Everyone's so convincing that you do think it's true. So there's always, I mean, I'm a massive cynic. I take everything with a grain of salt. I'm, always questioning facts or, whatever people are saying. That's just the way I am. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers the question.
Dave?
Yeah, I was going to say, and test. If it's something that's really important to me, I would just, let's say I've got my output from ChatGPT, I will then take my output from ChatGPT and tell Claude, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what ChatGPT told me. Can you tell me which pieces of this is accurate and which pieces of this would you go against and why? Okay, got it. Then I'll put it into DeepSeek. Then I'll put it back into ChatGPT. So if you test, and then you validate yourself after that, that's where at the end of it, you're like, okay, well, this now looks like evidence to me, rather than just ask a robot a question and take the answer, assume it's fact, and then all of a sudden approach your customer in that way or approach your coaching in that way. That's just lazy.
So to build on Dan's point about human, AI, human, I think you start with human intent, then you have AI assistance, and then there's the evidence check. That's utterly critical. And then human accountability it's a less elegant version of it, but I think it's a safer version.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, everything's on you, right? So it's up to you. If you want to use it to be a little bit lazy and to make you a little bit more efficient, and you're not really going to check the data, okay, that's okay, but that's going to affect your output, right? And you have to be accountable for that. Or if you want a better output, then you need to work harder and you need to test more. And I think I do.
Go on.
I was going to say, I think that's a little bit of an issue that people have with AI now, is I feel like a lot of people think that AI is just going to save me a lot of time. I disagree with that, right? Certainly it can save you time, but you've got to spend the time it saves you in productive ways. And at least half of that time that it saves you should be spent in terms of validation.
Fair. Okay. I'm going to take issue with something I said earlier as well. So, I'm democratic in my pushback. I think one of the dangers of using the panel approach that I mentioned is that it can come with bias. And I think if I arrive with 20 rehearsed answers, the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, am I more prepared to listen, or am I more prepared to steer the buyer towards the conversation I expected? So I think that's another really important part of this, which is you have to look in the mirror and you have to recognize your own biases and your own blind spots, but also recognize where your limitations are. So I think it's incumbent on us to use this technology responsibly, but also to be careful with it, because the consequences of doing it wrong could easily be that you damage a relationship, you lose a sale, or worse, you make the wrong sale because you've been really convincing, and then the customer lives to regret it. which means that you're going to end up having problems, you're going to churn and so on. So I think part of this process is to have red teaming exercises with your team. So one of the things I always do with my clients is that once a week we red team a call, and one side red team it and the other side defend it. And when we've done this, we've literally 10x the value of the sale, because we've ended up in a situation where we've explored stuff that the seller on their own never would have. So again, that partnership between human beings and individuals extends to the AI and teams. So how would you advise people to use this as a team improvement tool?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, look, diversity of thought is like super important, right? And I think we can often do things in silos, which is very, very, very dangerous. So I like the idea that you were saying you kind of run those kind of role plays, and then 7 or 8 people will give you a perspective that you didn't have before. The other thing I would say, I'm not sure whether this is going off kilter or answering your question. I think that's also the power of really useful onboarding. So if you're onboarding with the customer, because you were saying about selling the wrong thing to the wrong person or giving the customer a horrendous experience, and that's no good. That's horrendous for them, and also it's really bad for your retention rates as well. And so I think onboarding is a really, really important thing, right? Understanding from the customer, right? Probably when your relationship is at its most hunky-dory, right? The sale has been made, the customer is really looking forward to implementing whatever you've given them. Having the conversation about what does excellent look like to you? What do we need to deliver over the next period of time for you to be happy, for this to have answered the problems that you've got, and recording in massive detail exactly what that looks like. Then it's about passing it out to the rest of your team. So it's not just you as the salesperson that knows it. Everyone else who was involved, everyone else who will be involved moving forward is clear on what excellence looks like. And you can certainly leverage AI with that, because if you've got a detailed kind of printout of the customer telling you exactly what excellence looks like, and then you consistently feed back exactly what you're delivering, that's where it's able to call you out on, hey, excellence is up here, you're delivering down here, this is what is missing at the moment, this is the gap that you need to fill. So for sure you could use it in that way.
Another really interesting use that I found for it is in helping with customer interviews. And in terms of being able to then use that to feed back into marketing, to improve the attraction of sweet spot ideal customers. In terms of being able to improve product, the customer onboarding experience, massively powerful. But again, barring a few examples, like Amy Brown's organization, almost no one is doing that well. And it really surprises me, because it's such a powerful resource, and nothing beats your customer for evidence and first-party data. And so it just baffles me why people are not making better use of that. What advice would you give to a CRO or a CMO who is trying to improve retention, expansion, and win back?
Yeah, I mean, it's very short-termist, isn't it? And I understand that, if you're in a business that is constantly demanding, we were in businesses where, quarter to quarter, every quarter was the most important quarter. And if we didn't hit our number for this quarter, there was going to be trouble. And we've worked in businesses as well where it's month to month. And there were a couple of businesses back in the day was every other week if you didn't deliver the number. And so I think you need to let the sales people and the sales staff do their job. Like, that's their goal. They have to go out, they have to build the relationships, they have to understand their customers, and they have to sell the products and the services to them, and just allow them to do that. Don't cloud it with, asking them to kind of understand, do that journey mapping. But actually, if you give that to the customer success team or another group of individuals, and that is part of their jobs, it's actually part of how they are graded as to how well they are doing. It's a core key KPI for them. And if you're prepared to spend the money to allow them to do something that is unlikely to deliver top line growth very quickly, but actually it's a medium term and a longer term play, you're certainly going to yield the fruits. And it's not about doing it every once in a while or doing it with your largest customer, so you understand that. It's actually about doing it with all different customer types. And that's, again, where you can then feed it into AI. Okay, so here are the largest customers looking at this ICP, analyze all of these customer journeys and find out what the pain points are. What are the areas in here where we could be doing better, where we could support them more? What are other product ideas? Actually, 30% of our customers are telling us that they're trying to solve this issue that we can't solve at the moment. Could we build something that could help them and help our industry to perform better? So I think there's a lot of wins there, but it's not, it comes with spending the budget on something that won't feel like it's going to deliver immediate return. And I think there's a lot of CROs and CEOs who are a bit short-termist and so won't really want to do that. So it's about convincing them of that idea and then making sure that it's done across the board, not just your largest customers, but all customer types. Because you know what? If you've got a long tail and you can improve an experience of a lot of long tail customers, that's going to add up. And actually that long tail will become medium size and there'll be the larger fish in the end or in the future.
So if I were to interview 20, 50, 100 customers, would your AI be able to spot patterns that I couldn't see on my own?
Yes, for sure.
And
yeah,
so
sure.
In terms of mining that evidence, would you trust the AI's conclusions?
Not in isolation. No, you still got to validate it, right? So this is what I would say. If you gave me those conclusions and I had to quickly get to work, I would have a lot of confidence that what it's given me is directionally accurate and really useful. If I was using it to make an enormous decision, I would still want to validate it. I would still want to push back and ask why it came up with that, how it came up with it, what else has it missed, where does it think it might have been wrong in what it's delivered. And I don't think there's any tech or any AI out there that is so gloriously complete that we should just trust it wholeheartedly from whatever output it gives us. You know, I've got a lot of faith in, and the feedback on our blind spots app has been so great, and still, you've still got to validate it, right? Who's the robot here? The robot is the AI, not us. We don't take the output and then just blindly go and input, you know, blindly go and change our days and our world because of it. We've got to validate.
Because thinking back to earlier in the conversation, again, my fault. If I take my ChatGPT output and then I put it into Claude, then I put it into DeepSeek, and they all agree, that's triangulation. It's not necessarily evidence. And I think this again is where human judgment really needs to come into its own, because I need to ask the question, what external observation would have to exist before I'd call something validated? And I think this is where we have to be really careful when we're using AI technologies. Even if we're spreading our risk or feel like we're spreading our risk by using multiple models, let's face it, they've all stolen from exactly the same sources to a large extent, and mostly similar biases. And I saw a really interesting piece about the difference between AI opinion and then actual living cultures. So the difference between people in the Middle East and Africa, North America, Europe, Asia, and so on, and where they fit on the quadrants is markedly different, because most of the AI models are essentially hippie libertarians compared with the normal societies in terms of opinion. And so we've got to be really, really cautious when we're using these tools. And it keeps coming back to confidence in decision making and judgment. And I think if there's the big lesson that I've taken from today is that has to be where we put our energy and attention, even when we've got very robust, extremely well-trained models. You've got to have human oversight. And from a governance perspective, without that human oversight, your directors are probably going to end up in court.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, you know what, as I think about this conversation, a lot of it is coming back to the point of like collaboration with human beings, right? You called me out at the beginning, or we were talking about salespeople and account managers and customer service and product all working in an ecosystem, and often that isn't kind of the case. And I think it's the same at this end of the spectrum as well, right? Once you've done all your, you know, your validation and you believe what you have is evidence via ChatGPT and, you know, triangulation and all of those things that we've talked about. Okay, now the humans need to talk about it. Kids, you can go out of the room. The kids are the robots. Now the adults need to talk about it. And then it's about getting together with your peers who hopefully between you have a lot of good judgment, and then talking about that and discussing what is the next best way forward with whatever that output is, rather than just one person sitting in a room taking the robot's idea and moving ahead with it full steam.
I'd just add as well, one of the things I think that I haven't really touched on, but something I do quite often is I use the AI in waves. I'm not the best at switching off naturally. When I'm using it, I'm just like at it all day long. So I consciously use it in waves where I might take a few days off or even a week off. And that gives me a chance. And same with like podcasts and my phone and other things like that. So it just gives me an opportunity to basically switch off, not rely on everything that's basically consuming me via social media and everything else that I consume. and instead try and come up with some, answers myself. So I think that's a really good takeaway for people to take on, because you can get fatigued with AI very easily, and it's important to not do that.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. Well, actually, it's a rabbit warren. I just want to pick up on one final point that you guys talked about. You said that you train the model. I'm interested how you do, not technically, but operationally.
We would feed it bogus scenarios and situations. So we played the role of sales manager, individual contributor, player coach, and we kept feeding it through examples of forecasting calls that we thought had gone brilliantly for whatever reason. We would give it an offload of what we had done for the day and what our opinion was on that day, and then we would test it. Originally, when we were testing the modeling, it would come back and it would be agreeing with us a lot. Oh, great! Sounds like you had an amazing day. Looks like you need to fix it. And then over time, we would iterate and say, no, this isn't what excellence looks like. Excellence looks like this. So you need to now model your findings and your blind spots based on what excellence looks like. And you need to, actually coming back to triangulate, you need to triangulate that with everything that we're giving you in the onboarding about that particular persona, and look at that as well to find out what those areas are and what those blind spots are.
We've come to time. So what's one question I should have asked that I didn't? Dan?
One of the questions I think salespeople should ask that they're not currently asking is AI actually making me a better thinker? It's something I wrestle with all the time. It can help you produce more, can help you move faster, it can help you get stuff, through your inbox. Great, that's all amazing. But if it's making your thinking worse rather than better, rather than your output being better, then you're not progressing. It's just a dangerous game. It's kind of the theme we've spoke about today. So, it's not about, necessarily getting the answers, but it's about, having the thinking challenged. I think that's where the magic comes.
I think you make a great point, which is more is not better. More is more, better is better. And we need to be able to make that distinction. And Dave?
Well, yeah, look, we talked quite a lot about the concept of blind spots. So I guess it would be like, what are the blind spots that you see repeatedly being made by salespeople and sales leaders? And I guess to answer it, I mean, if you forgive me for being like a little bit meta, it's really about like the biggest blind spot is people, particularly in sales, where I think we can. I'm gonna broad brush here, but we're often a very confident bunch, and I think the biggest blind spot is genuinely believing that we don't have any, or thinking that thinking that we're too busy to work on those other things that I'm not really aware of. I've got to work on, going from good to great. And that's crazy. I would say, as I look back in my career, when I've made the biggest mistakes or when I've made the biggest leaps from actually being okay at something to being amazing, it's usually because somebody else has pointed out, Dave, you're missing this. You're not even covering this. You are miles off. And then learning from that and getting better. And I think that's a big takeaway for everyone. We can be really stubborn. We can be very confident and very arrogant. And the biggest thing that we can do for our careers is to think about, you said it, Marcus, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, train your AI to humiliate you every now and again. Have it challenge you. Have it find out what your blind spots are, where you may be wrong, where you're over egging or under egging a point. That's also really important. And make sure that you don't just blindly believe what it's telling you. And I love Dan's idea. Step away from it and see whether or not you can think independently. My wife often accused me of not being able to think without my phone. And the challenge is that we need to keep our brains sharp, because at some point, there's a very high probability that we will be priced out of the market, or our favorite AI will be shut down. You only have to look at what happened with Anthropic over in the States. So, any final thoughts before we finish?
I think I've summarized it. Good to great isn't the place to dig anymore. It's what am I missing, and how do I think better, and how do I think clearer? I think that's the win of AI, for sure.
Dan, anything to add?
I think we've covered a fair amount. All
so
good.
How can people get hold of you?
Good question, Marcus. So the best thing to do is just to go to our website, YourSalesEdge.co. There you'll find information about our guide, and as well as our app that we've recently built, Blind Spots. Additionally, you can go to our LinkedIn profiles. I'm Daniel Simmons. You've got David Pender, and you'll be able to find everything you need to know about us on there. And then finally, we recently launched a YouTube page where we're producing content pretty much every few days, videos and shorts. So again, you can go check that out on YouTube at YourSalesEdge.
So, Dave, you've got a golden ticket and you can go back to whisper in the ear of the idiot Dave, age 23. What one bit of advice would you have given him that he'd have undoubtedly have ignored but would have benefited from?
Sounds like you knew me when I was 23, because I was definitely an idiot then.
We all were.
All right, okay, good. That's good. That's good to know. It would be slow down and be present. It would definitely be slow down and be present. And I tell you what, it's a bit irritating, but like my dad gave me that golden ticket time and time and time again. Like he told me that so many times. I got a letter from him that he wrote, like kind of pleading with me to just like slow down, particularly from a work perspective. And I think I spent a lot of time running 100 miles an hour for work, and I didn't smell the roses enough. And I lost, if I'm being really candid, I lost a bit of life through that. And so now I do try to slow down and be present and be mindful as much as I possibly can, because honestly, that's what matters. I've loved having this conversation. Everything we talked about is so important, but it pales versus the really important things in life. And that all comes with just like relaxing.
I wish I'd had you whisper that in my ear and then beat me with it. Thank you both. So Dave Pender, Dan Simmons, thanks for joining me on The Inquisitor. Once again, if anyone has been moved by what we've talked about and wants to get in touch, then Dan's given you details on how to get in touch with them. You can get in touch with me through DMing me on LinkedIn or marcus@principledselling.com. And in the meantime, stay safe, happy selling, and slow down. Bye-bye.